Magandang araw ulit sa inyo. Welcome ulit sa isang lesson ng Advanced Database Management. Ang course code is ITEP204. Ang topic natin ngayon ay data modeling using the entity relationship model. Again, our main text is Fundamentals of Database Systems, 6th edition. Copyright 2011 by Elmarsri and Navathey. This is published by as Addison Wesley by Pearson Education. So, nasa chapter 7 na tayo, no, ng ating pinag-aaralan. Again, ang ating topic is data modeling using the entity relationship model. We will be covering pages 199 to 232. Okay, so chapter outline. Ang i-discuss natin, example ng database application. We will be using the database company. Then we will be discussing the entity relationship model concepts like entities and attributes, entity types, value sets, and key attributes, relationships and relationship types, weak entity types, roles and attributes in relationship types, the entity relationship diagram notation, and yung entity relationship diagram for the company database schema, and pag may time pa yung alternative notations like UML class diagrams. Okay, so let's review yung tinatawag na database design. So, nandito sa kanan yung pinaka design process na dinadaanan sa pag-gather ng data requirements, while yung nasa kaliwa naman, ito yung sa sa functionality ng ating application, information systems application. So, nandito yung mga functions. Okay, so from the mini world, again, mini world is a subset of the real world. For example, yung real world, halo-halo kasi ng mga concepts yan. Pero kukuha lang tayo ng example. For example, from the real world, kunin lang natin yung mini world ng university. Isang university. So, yung university is a mini world na pwede natin i-analyze. Kasi pagka lahat-lahat ng aspects ng real world ang gagamitin natin or ang i-analyze natin, medyo nakaka-overwhelm yun. Sobrang daming elements. Pero kung kumuha lang tayo ng maliit, ayan, ma-analyze natin yan. Then from the mini world, kukunin natin yung requirements collection and analysis. So guys, isa kasi ako sa mga requirements engineering practitioner. Naniniwala kami na once na mali ang na-gather mo na requirements, mali ang na-gather mo na information regarding kung ano dapat ang maging output ng or design ng ng software, magti-trickle down yon dun sa result mo. So, normally nga, 3 to 6 months ang development time. So, kung dun sa 1 month or 2 months, 1 month actually is too long for requirements gathering. So, dun sa 1 month na pag-gather mo ng requirements, mali yung na-gather mo. So, yung natitirang 5 months ng development time, masasayang lang kasi mali yung nakuha mo. So, be careful with this. At saka dito nag-a-apply yung saying na the devil is in that detail. So, hahanapin mo yung devil kung baga. So, hahanapin mo yung syempre, pagka nahanap mo yung devil, tatanggalin mo. Ayan. So, talagang dapat ay suriin mo lahat kasi pagka hindi ka naging mabusisi sa details, may skip ka na baka importante pala later on. Okay, so from the requirements collection and analysis, ayun, maghihiwalay into data requirements at saka functional requirements. Yung functional requirements, pupunta yun dun sa, applications development. Nandyan yung Java, C#, so yung programming part. And then dito naman sa pababa, ito yung data requirements. Dito papasok yung mga database design natin. So, yung munang sa kaliwa, so functional requirements, then functional analysis, high-level transaction specification, then applications program design, and then transaction implementation. So, itetest na natin yung program. While dito naman sa pababa, sa database design, so from data requirements, magkakaroon tayo ng conceptual design. So, conceptual design, actually, ito yung schema natin. Yung schema, nire-represent natin currently as ER diagram. And then, yung schema, dadagdagan natin ng more detail. So, papasok na yung, anong tawag dito? Mga restrictions, requirements, meron bang yung mga relationships natin, mga constraints, yan, doon papasok yon. And then logical design, data model mapping. Ito yung from form design, paano yung form design mo ay magiging papasok sa mga sa mga functions, or so from your form design papasok yan sa functions mo, then from functions paano siya papasok, magko-communicate dun sa database management system mo. Yun. So logical design, data modeling map. Then yung physical design is mainly yung pinaka SQL code mo. Ano yung pinaka kumbaga working design ng SQL. And then implementation na internal schema. So naandun na yung mga naandun na yung mga SQL code mo at saka yung details, restrictions ng SQL code mo. Okay. So, next. So, example company database. So, ito yung description ng ating database na that is called company. So, requirements of company. So, yung design natin dito is i-oversimplify muna natin for illustrative purposes kasi pagka sumobrang detail yung ginawa natin, baka malito kayo. Okay, so ano na ba yung mga elements ng database company? So, the company is organized into departments. Okay, so may departments daw. So, each department has a name, a number, and an employee who manages the department. So, has a name, number, so yun yung ilalagay natin as attribute ng department, and an employee who manages the department. So, yung employee is may attribute na manggagaling sa employee papunta dito sa department na to na which identify the employees, pero yung employees is a separate entity So, dapat may magkaroon ng kumbaga relationship between the department and the employee who manages the department. And then may requirement yung relationship na yun we keep track of the start date of that department manager. So, yung employee magkakaroon ng relationship sa department because the employee manages the department. And yun nga, dapat yung start date nung pagkaka-assign ng employee na yun as a manager ay may start date. And then, each department controls several projects. Okay, another entity na naman ito. So, first na entity is, so ang database natin is company, first entity is department, second entity na binanggit is department. Second entity na binanggit is projects. So, ano yung relationship ng projects sa department? Yung department controls the projects. Ayan. Tapos, each project has a name and number. Ayan. So, in-identify yung attributes and is located at a single location. So, another entity, yung location. Okay? So, yung project ay may relationship pala sa location. Next. Next requirement. So, ayan. We store each employee's social security number. So, ito, binanggit na yung entity na employee. So, we store each employee's social security number or SSN, address, salary, sex. So, yun daw yung mga attributes ni, ni employee and birth date. So, ayan. Each employee works for one department but may work on several projects. So, yun yung rule. Bawat isang employee ay isang department lang, pero pwede magkaroon ng mapa-assign sa iba't ibang projects. Another requirement is that we keep track of the number of hours. Number of hours per week. That an employee currently works on each project. We also keep track of the direct supervisor of each employee. So, may relationship yung employee ay may relationship sa kapwa niya employee as direct supervisor. And then another requirement, each employee may have a number of dependents. So, bagong entity to, no? Dependent. That is related to each employee. So, for each dependent, we keep track of their name, sex, birth date, and the relationship. Ayan. So, binanggit yung attributes. Ayan. And the relationship to employee. So, ayan. Ito yung nabuo nating entity relationship schema. Schema diagram for the company database. Again, bakit tinawag siya na schema, no? So, ang nakalagay lang dito ay yung ating entity or relations, employee, department, project, and dependents, at saka yung kanilang mga attributes. Okay, so pagka yun yung binanggit, schema ang tawag doon, Hindi natin, pagka nilagyan kasi natin na, ginawa na natin yan ng mga tables, in-represent natin in table format, tapos may sample data, database instance na ang tawag doon. So, kung ganito lang yung binibigay, schema pa lang ang tawag. Yan. So, pinakita dito yung mga entities, relationships like works for, manages, works on, dependents of, and supervision. Yung supervision, mapansin natin, may nakalagay na label sa line from employee to supervision sa kanan at sa kaliwa. Sa kaliwa is yung supervisor, sa kanan yung supervisee. Next. Ayan. So, pag-usapan natin yung ER model concepts. Ang una ay yung entities and attributes. Ano ba yung entities? Entities are specific objects or things in the mini world that are represented in the database. For example, employee John Smith, the research department, and the product X project. So, yung pinaka-entity ay si John Smith na naka-assign sa research department at naka-assign sa project X, product X. Ayan. So, yun yung entity. Pero yung entity type niya is employee. Ayan. Attributes, these are properties used to describe an entity. For example, an employee entity may have a name, a social security number or SSN, address, sex, and birth date. A specific entity will have a value for each of its attributes. For example, a specific employee entity may have a name John Smith, SSN 123456789, address 731 Fondren, Houston, Texas, sex is M, and birth date 09 January 55. Each attribute has a value set or data type associated with it. Example, integers, string, subrange, or enumerated type. Wait lang. Okay, next. Types of attributes. Okay, so these are the types of attributes. Simple. So, dalawa yung kailangang alalahanin natin dito sa simple. A simple attribute should be single value and atomic value. Ayan, simple and atomic. Single and atomic. So, ibig sabihin ng single, wala na siya ibang value, isa lang. Like for example, pag sinabi mong last name, so yung isang last name lang. And later, ano yung kabaliktaran ng single. Then atomic, ibig sabihin, hindi na pwedeng i-break down. So, like for example, yung age, hindi mo na pwedeng i-break down yung age. So, ayun. Each entity has a single atomic value for the attribute. For example, social security number or sex. Another type of attribute ay yung tinatawag nating composite. So, yung composite entity, yun yung kabaliktaran ng atomic. So, kung yung atomic hindi na pwedeng i-break down, yung composite, pwede siyang i-break down. For example, so composite is the attribute may be composed of several components. For example, yung address. Yung address, pag sinabi mong home address, for example, ito yung pwede mong i-break down yung information into, or yung data into apartment number, house number, street name, city, state, zip code, and country. Kagaya rin ng name natin, pag sinabing name, pwedeng first name, middle name, last name, and name suffix. Ayan. So, composition may form a hierarchy where some components themselves are composites. So, yung composite entity daw, yung composite attribute, pwedeng magkaroon din ng attribute na composite ulit. Like for example, kung yung address ay lagyan ng yung zip code ng address, pwedeng lagyan yung zip code ng state code, pinagsama-sama siyang state code, province code, at saka city code. For example lang. Or yung apartment number. Pwedeng yung apartment number is yung house number na lang. Pwedeng yung house number is made up of yung block number at saka lot number. Pwedeng ganun. So, kasama siya sa isang composite na attribute, pero siya mismong attribute, yung isang attribute na yun ay made up of composite attribute din. And then yung third na type ng attribute dito is the multivalued attribute. So, ito naman yung kabaliktaran ng single. So, yung single value sa taas ng simple attribute, yung multi-valued naman, isang attribute siya, pero pwede siyang magkaroon ng maraming values. For example, yung cellphone number. Ang isang tao normally ngayon ay hindi lang iisang phone number, pwedeng dalawa, tatlong phone numbers or cellphone numbers. Yan. So, multi-valued siya. So, this is an entity that may have multiple values for that attribute. For example, pagka pinapipili ka ng car sa isang showroom, so, di ba, meron kang model, meron kang make, yung year, tapos, bawat model na yan, it comes in several colors. Ayun, so, multi-value yung color. Pwede rin sa student na mag-e-enroll, kung titingnan natin yung background, lalo na sa master's degree, titingnan mo kung meron siyang previous degrees. Or yung mga student na may previous degrees na, BS, kagaya ko, BS Computer Science ako, pero I plan on studying BS Real Estate Management and sayang hindi ko tinapos yung aking master sa information systems Ayun. Also, ayun. So, paano dinidenote ang multi-valued? So, instead na basta siya name ng isang attribute, so yung attribute mismo ay may open and close curly braces. Ayun, yung composite is made up of open-close curly brace pero several components niya or elements niya is separated by comma. Dito naman isang attribute lang pero open and close enclosed siya ng curly braces. Okay, next. Ayan, so this is an example of a an attribute na composite attribute na multi-valued pa. For example, yung so nested composite and multi-valued attribute. Yan. So for example, yung student meron siyang college, year, degree, and field. Then, malaman natin kung meron siyang previous degrees. Yung previous degrees ay meron ding, can be divided into several attributes pa. Like, previous degrees, so may college siya, year, degree, at saka field. And then, yung previous degrees mismo, pwedeng hindi lang iisa yung previous degrees niya. So, dun papasok yung multi-value. So, ayun, may mga components siya. So, composite siya. And then, pwedeng maraming previous degrees. So, multi-valued din siya. Ayan. Okay? So, that is an example of a nested, composite, and multi-valued attribute. Okay, so, tingnan natin itong example na table. So, in-identify nito kung ano-ano yung mga pinag-usapan natin kanina na elements, concepts ng relational model. Okay, so dito sa diagram natin, table, ang tawag dun sa student is a relation name. Relation name. Ang buo kasing relation, yung buong table. Yung buong table ay relation yon. Another term or kung paano natin tawagin yung relation name is pwedeng entity name or entity type or relationship relation type yan. Or in layman's term pwedeng table. Yan, table name. Okay, then yung relation name ay may attributes. Ayun, attributes niya ay yung nasa pinakataas ng table ng bawat columns. So name, SSN, home phone, address, office phone, and age, GPA. Pag sinabi nating entity, yun yung isang set or isang row ng value. Yun yung entity. Actually, pwede ring tawaging entity instance. Kasi yung entity, lalo na kung yung database natin is being used by millions of users, pwedeng every millisecond or every second, nagbabago kasi yung values niyan. So, that is an entity, pero pwede parang sinabi natin, each second nagbabago yan. So, pinicture natin. So, entity instance. Yan. So, pwedeng tawaging entity instance. Whichever is correct. Pero formally yung entity or entity instance, tinatawag din nating tuples. So, ilang entity instances yan? Meron tayong 5. So, pag tinanong ilang tuples, meron tayong 5 tuples. Layman's term, row. So, 5 rows yung naandyan. Okay, so ang tawag dun sa buong table na yan ay entity set. Ibig sabihin, maraming entities, maraming tuples. Pag-iisa lang yung tuple, so entity lang. Pag-iisa lang yung tuple or isang entity instance lang. Pero, padamihin mo yung entity instances, padamihin mo yung entities, padamihin mo yung tuples, so ang tawag na sa kanya, entity set, or it's the collection of all entities of a particular entity type in the database at any point in time. Yan. Okay, next. So, entity type and entity set. So, an entity type defines a collection or a set of entities having the same attributes. So, in relational algebra, ang ginagamit natin to denote an entity type. So, ang entity type is, yung pangalan nung entity. For example, kanina is student. Dito, employee yung example. So, yun yung pangalan. Then, yung components niya is denoted by, open and close, curly braces, then sa loob, yung mga components niya may comma. And then, ayun, yung components ng entity type is represented by its attributes. Then, yung mga complex attributes, represented ulit ng, open and, yung elements niya, ng isang complex attribute is represented by open and close curly braces with commas yung mga elements niya. Okay, so dito yung entity types are employee and company. And then yung employee ay may attributes na name, age, and salary. Yung entity type na company ay merong attributes na name, headquarters, and presidents. So again, yung employee and company are the entity types. So names siya ng entity types. Pero yung entity mismo, yun yung, for example, John Smith, 5580K. Ayun, yun yung entity. Another entity is Fred Brown, 30K. Another entity is Judy Clark, 20K. So, ilang entities meron tayo? 1, E1, E2, E3. Tapos yung tatlong tuldok, ang tawag doon, ellipsis ha. Guys, ang rules sa paggawa ng ellipsis, tatlong dots lang. Huwag yung sobrahan kasi hindi na ellipsis ang tawag doon. What we use is ellipsis. Pababa man or yung pa-across, horizontal. Okay, so yung E1, employee 1, employee 2, employee 3. And yung ellipsis represents the term so on and so forth. So, E1, E2, E3, and so on and so forth. Company, meron tayong dalawang entity instances dito. Si Sunco Oil, Houston, John Smith. And Company 2, Fast Computer, Dallas, and Bob King, and so on and so forth. Okay, so yan naman yung pag-define natin ng isang entity type. Okay, another na kailangan nating matandaan sa entities. So, again, ang tawag dun sa entity set ay, yung sa buong entity set, ay, relation. Relation din. So, instead na entity type ang tawag natin, relation ang tawag natin. Ayan. So, relation name is student or entity name. Tapos, yung isang pababa, yung pinakapangalan, ang tawag doon attribute. Pero yung mga values doon sa attribute na yon, ang tawag na natin is domain or value set nung attribute na yon, or domain ng isang attribute or attribute domains. Okay, so isang column lang yun. So, yung pangalan is attribute, yung values ay domain or value set. Okay, so yung attribute, pwede natin tawagan, another phrase to identify attributes is yung attributes, yun yung role nung domain na yun. Or domain roles. Ayan. Another na kailangan natin tandaan sa domain, ang domain ay may definitions. So meron kang attribute. For example, ang attribute ay name. So, ano yung mga values na pwede nating ilagay sa domain? Magkakaroon ka ng role. Dapat siya, for example, ay character, a set of alphabetic characters. Pwede ba ang numeric? Mostly, wala namang bawal. Pinagbabawal ang number na character sa name. Yung even the suffix, ang inilalagay natin sa first, second, third is capital I, double capital I para sa the second, and triple capital I for the third na suffix. Halimbawa, Ninoy Benigno the third. So, may suffix siya na the third, triple I yun. So, bawal pa rin yung number. Okay? Pwede ba ang special character sa name? Depende actually. Meron sa Africa na ang pangalan nila ay merong exclamation point or yun? May pound yata. So, there are countries na yung name nila ay may special character. So, pwedeng special character. So, pwedeng alphabetic character at saka special character. Pero hindi pwede number. So, yun yung rule para maging name. So, yung rule na yun, ang tawag doon is domain definition. For example, itong phone number, ano ba ang phone number? Normally, it's 10 digits na numeric. Tapos, ayan, may format. So, ang domain definition, meron kang data type at saka yung format. Yun yung domain definition or just domain. So, okay, sorry. Yung domain definition, yun yung rule. Yung mga set of values na nag-follow nung rule na yun, na pwede dun sa attribute na yun, yun yung pinaka-domain or value set. Okay, medyo nakakalito. Message nyo lang ako para sa additional na clarification. Tapos dito, sa diagram natin na to, makikita nyo, yung phone is dalawa, So, iisang domain. Yung domain is phone number. Value set, ayun, mga value set ng phone numbers. Or yung domain definition ay isa. Ang rule is paano gumawa ng isang phone number sa US, for example. Iba kasi sa Philippines. Pero makikita mo, magkaibang attributes yan. Iisang domain, pero magkaiba ang attributes. Yung attributes kasi, yung domain roles. Pareho siyang phone number, pero magkaiba ng function. Yung isa is pang home, yung isa pang office. So, isang attribute is home phone, yung another is office phone, pero magkapareho ng domain definition. Therefore, pwedeng magkapareho ng domain or value set. Yan. Next natin na kailangang i-define ay yung entity types and key attributes. Again, yung entity types, ito yung pangalan ng table. So, yung table mismo. Entities with the same basic attributes are grouped or typed into an entity type. So, for example, yung pare-parehong yung magkakaibang individuals or entities na pare-pareho ng attributes na meron silang employee number, meron silang name, meron silang age, address, etc. So, pwede natin pagsamahin sa isang entity type na employee. Ayan. So, again, ano yung mga pwedeng maging entities? Pwedeng real objects, pwedeng concepts. Ayan. Concepts like project. Yung project kasi hindi mo naman mahahawakan, pwedeng living beings ang isang entity, pwedeng non-living na objects. And then an attribute of an entity type of which each entity must have a unique value is called a key attribute for the entity type. For example, SSN of an employee. So, ayun, meron tayong entity type or isang table, and dapat yung entities dito, yung mga tuples na ma-identify, dapat may at least isang attribute na magkakaiba bawat tuple, magkakaiba bawat entity instance. So, for example, ngayong social security number, bawal magkaroon ng parehong social security number ang magkaibang employees. Dito sa Philippines, ang makukulong ka pagka may kapareho ka ay yung tax identification number. Bawal magkaroon ng kaparehong tax identification number ang magkaibang tao. Also, ang isang tao ay bawal magkaroon ng dalawang tax identification number. Dapat isa lang. So, yun nga lang, personalities. Kasi yung business, like for example, corporation and partnerships, so yung individual, yung may-ari, may sarili niyang tax identification number, yung business niya ay meron ding iba na tax identification number. In case of social security naman, ayun, meron din ang bawat employees, meron din ang mga employers. Ayun, a key attribute may be composite. Ayun, for example, tag number is a key of a car entity type with components number or state code. So, pwedeng hindi atomic ang isang key attribute, So, attribute siya na composite. An entity type may have more than one key. For example, the car entity may have two keys, vehicle ID number or VIN, or vehicle tag number composed of number and state code. So, ito yung normal na ginagamit. Ang tawag dito ay license plate number. And so, next slide, ito yung figures A and B ng figure 7.7. Yung nasa taas ay entity chain notation ng entity relationship diagram representing the entity type car. Ayun, may attribute siya na registration. Registration, which is a composite attribute made up of state and number. So, nakalagay dito ay key attribute siya. Another is yung vehicle ID, another key attribute. And then yung other attributes such as year, model, and make. And then merong multi-value attribute na color. Ang ginamit sa kanya double line na ellipse. So later pag-usapan natin yung mga notations. Entity set corresponding to entity type car. Ayan, meron tayong relational algebra dito sa ibaba representing the entity type car. So, car is made up of registration. Pinakita dito yung sub-attributes ng attribute na registration, number at saka state. Then, vehicle ID, make, model, year, and yung color nakalagay sa open and close parenthesis. Ano nga bang ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin nun ay multi-valued siya. Ayun. So, yun yung nasa taas na binasa lang natin, yun yung schema ng entity type na car. Then, yung value set niya, itong nasa ilalim, car 1 is ang registration number niya or code is ABC123, yun yung number, at saka yung state, Texas. Then, vehicle ID is TK629. Actually, ito yung induction code. Ito yung mga sticker na nakalagay sa windshield ng mga sasakyan. Then, make is Ford Mustang. Model is convertible. Year 2004. And possible color is red or black. And yung car 2, nandito rin yung entity instance. Car 3, nandito rin yung entity instance. So on and so forth. Next. So ito na yung mga notations na pwede nating gamitin for our ER schemas. So again, ito yung Peter Chen notation. So yung single line na rectangle, ang tawag dyan is entity type, or sometimes we can call them strong entity types. Ayan. So independent siya. Then yung next symbol is yung rectangle with double lines. Ang tawag dito ay weak entity type. So dependent naman siya na entity type. Pag-usapan natin later yon. Bakit yung isa ay naging strong, yung isa ay naging weak. And then next is yung ito yung standard na relationship type, single line na diamond. Yung double line na diamond, ang tawag naman dito ay relationship type din siya pero weak relationship type or identifying relationship type. So ginagamit lang to pag meron tayong weak entity type na i-relate natin to another entity, And then, meron tayong attribute. Ito yung oval na single line. Ito yung ordinary or standard na attribute na merong connecting line. Yung key attribute naman, yun din, merong oval shape siya, single line, and then may connecting line. And then, yung name ng attribute ay nakalagay sa, or underline. Yung attribute name ay may underline. Okay. Next is yung multivalued attribute. Kagaya nga kanina yung color, di ba? Ellipse siya or oval na may double line and then yung connecting line. And then yung composite attribute, ang pinaka-composite attribute yung apat na ellipses yan, apat na ovals. Yung pinaka-ilalim na oval na may connecting line, yun yung pinaka-name ng composite attributes. Then yung sub-attributes niya, yun yung nasa taas, yung tatlo. Okay, so magtaka kayo, merong dotted line, So, yung susunod, ito yung derived attribute. So, represented by, it is an ellipse with a connecting line na dotted yung lines niya. Okay, so bakit tinawag siya na derived attribute? Kasi dinerive or kinompute siya from another attribute. For example, yung age kasi pwedeng computin from your date of birth. So, yung age, derived attribute. Ayan. So, eto, meron namang examples ng binary relationships dito sa ilalim. Dalawang entities, E1 at saka E2, with that is related by relationship R. So, itong pinakaunang example ay total participation relationship. So, meron tayong strong entity na E1 at saka weak entity na E2. So, dahil weak entity yung E2, ang ginamit nating relationship ay weak relationship or identifying relationship. Tapos yung connector nila ay double lines. Yan. And then, itong susunod na notation, ito yung cardinality ratio notation. Representing a one-to-many relationship ng entity 1 at saka entity 2. So, lalagyan mo lang ng notation na 1 yung ang cardinality ay, yung entity na ang cardinality ay 1. Then, dun sa kabila, ang cardinality niya is M. Ayan, kaya may M na notation. And then, yung last naman na notation, ang tawag dito is yung structural constraint, min-max notation. Okay, so yung min, represents yung participation constraint niya. Yung max naman dinidenote niya yung nasa taas. Yung max ay dinidenote niya yung cardinality ratio. So min max. So kagaya nung sa taas na 1:m So dapat dito sa min max notation ilalagay mo yung 1 at saka m dun sa dalawang max na values. Ayan. Pag-usapan natin later yung participation constraints, yung ilalagay dun sa min na number. Okay? Next. Ayan. So, dun sa ating pinakita na diagram, So, ano yung mga entity types dito? Yung entity type employee, department, project, at saka dependent. Meron tayong 4 na entities dito sa database na to. Okay, so relationships and relationship types. A relationship relates two or more distinct entities with a specific meaning. For example, employee John Smith works on product X project, or employee Franklin Wong manages the research department. Ayan. So, meron kang dalawang relations or entity types, pinag-relate mo sa isa't isa. Yung isa, employee at saka project, ang relationship ay works on. Another example is yung employee at saka yung department, ang relationship ay manages. Relationships of the same type are grouped or typed into relationship type. For example, works on relationship type in which employees and projects participate. So, inuna mo yung relationship type, yung diamond. And then, inilagay mo yung participating relations or entities na employees and projects. Or yung another example is ang relationship type mo ay manages, and then yung participating entities ay employees and departments. Ayan. The degree of relationship type, meron tinatawag na relationship type degree is the number of participating entity types. So pag tinanong ka, anong degree ng relationship yan? So, bibilangin mo lang yung number of entities na nakaduksong dun sa relationship. So, pagka isang entity lang ang nakaduksong sa isang relationship type, ang tawag doon unary. Pag dalawa, binary. Pag tatlo, ternary. Pag apat, pataas, ang tawag na doon n-ary or n-nary na degree ng relationship. Okay, so example ng relationship instance. Dito meron tayong relationship instance na works for na ang participating relationships ay employee at saka department. So makikita natin dito, ayun, maraming employees na nagpa-participate. And then sa bawat isang department na nagpa-participate, several employees yung related sa isang department. Ayun. So maraming employees ang nagre-relate sa kakaunti na department, sa isang department. Okay. Next example. So eto naman yung relationship type na works on. Ang participating entities or relations are employee and project. Makikita natin na ayun, may several employees na nagpa-participate. And then may makikita tayo ng dalawang employees such as employee 2 and employee 7 ay nagpa-participate sa more than one projects. Yan, dito naman sa project, may tatlong projects tayo na bawat isang project ay 2 or more employees yung pa-participate sa or nakikipag-relate sa kanya. Okay, so one project, many employees. And then, pwedeng many projects sa one employee. So, tingnan natin anong magiging niyan, cardinality. More than one relationship type can exist with the same participating entity. So, yun nga, meron kang dalawang entities, employee at saka department, pero yung relationship existing between the two entities ay dalawa. Isang manages na relationship type, another is the works for relationship type. So, dalawang entities, dalawa din ang relationship types. Pwede naman yun. Okay, so ito ulit yung schema diagram natin. Ilan ang mga relationship types na inilagay dito? Meron tayong 6. Works for, manages, controls, works on, dependents of, at saka supervision. So, pansin natin na yung 5 ay active words, then merong isa na na iba yung supervision. Tingnan natin kung bakit. Okay, so weak entity types. An entity that does not yung weak entity type daw is an entity that does not have a key attribute. Okay, a weak entity must participate in an identifying relationship type with an owner or identifying entity type. Okay, so yung weak entity may ka-relationship siya na another entity. So kung weak entity ito, dapat yung ka-relationship niya ay isang owner or identifying entity type. So entities are identified by the combination of a partial key of the weak entity type. So yung weak entity type hindi key attribute kundi partial key attribute ang meron siya. The particular entity they are related to in the identifying entity type. Okay, for example, suppose that a dependent entity is identified by the dependent's first name and birth date, and the specific employee that dependent is related to, and the specific employee that the dependent is related to. So, dependent is a weak entity type with employee as its identifying entity type via identifying relationship type ay dependent of. Ayan, punta tayo dito sa ating database schema. Ang ating partial key ay name, which is related to the employee. Ayan, partial key is name na related siya sa employee. And ang kanyang identifying relationship is yung dependence of. Bakit siya naging weak entity? Kasi yung employee, yung dependent, magiging dependent lang kung one of their family members ay employee nung company na yon. Pagka hindi naman employee ng company na yon, walang relationship na mag-exist. Hindi sila magiging dependent. Ano? Also, magiging dependent lang pagka ni-require ng government or ginusto ng company na magkaroon ng mga i-identify yung mga dependents. Pagka wala yung mga conditions na yon, so wala din ito, mababaliwala yung relationship na dependence of. Okay, constraints on relationships. Ayan. So, balik ulit tayo dun sa min-max na constraints or min-max notation. So, constraints on relationship types. Meron tinatawag na maximum cardinality at meron tinatawag na minimum cardinality. So, yung maximum cardinality can be one or many. Yun lang yung dalawa. No point pagka zero kasi yung maximum cardinality. So, ibig sabihin, wala siyang pakialam dun sa database na yon pagka nagsisiro siya sa maximum cardinality. Another name for maximum cardinality, ito yung tinatawag na ratio, cardinality ratio na constraint. So, ano na yung mga types ng cardinality ratio or maximum cardinality? Pwedeng, so, dalawang entities yan relating to each other, So, pwedeng 1:1 ang relationship, pwedeng 1:many, or many to one. Then, ang pinaka-huli is many to many. Ganito guys, medyo nawiwirduhan kasi ako dun sa pag-label ng ibang books. Ang rule sa algebra, pag gumamit ka ng A na, anong tawag dito? Variable, A na variable, kailangan yung susunod na variable, B, susunod na variable, C, then D, E, F, G, etc. etc. Pag nagkaroon ka ng variable I, yun yung first variable mo, ang susunod na variable is J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T. Pagka nagsimula ka ng X, dapat following ng X ay Y at saka Z. May susunod pa? Dapat wala na. 3 lang. Kasi nagsimula ka sa X. Kung more than 3, dapat nagsimula ka sa A. Yun. So, ganun yung pag-a-assign ng variables. So, dito sa ating, since yung ratio constraints, kinuha itong relational model sa algebra, sa mathematics. So, ang unang ginagamit na notation dapat dito ay M. Meron kasi nagsisimula sa N agad. Dapat M muna bago N. Ayan. Pag nagamit mo na yung M, dalawa yung many mo, so gamitin mo na yung N. Ayan. So, wag yung hindi mo pa nagagamit yung M, gagamitin mo na yung N. Ayan, So, ayun, many to many relationship na many to many cardinality ng isang relationship ay denoted by M:N. Ayan. Minimum cardinality naman. Ito naman ang tinatawag ay participation constraint. Yung taas ay cardinality ratio, itong nasa baba, yung minimum, is called the participation constraint or existence dependency constraint. So, ibig sabihin, ano ba siya? Kailangan, total participation ba siya? Kumbaga parang, kailangan, pagka nag-exist yung isang entity, kailangan mag-participate agad yung isa. Yun. So, optional ba o total yung participation? Okay, so ang notation natin dito ay ang minimum number natin ay nasa kaliwa ng min-max na notation. And then, dalawa lang naman yung numbers dito, no? Actually, pwedeng tatlo. Pwedeng 0 yung participation, ibig sabihin optional, or pwedeng 1 or many. Pag 1 or many, ibig sabihin mandatory yung participation mo. So actually, may relationship yan dun sa what type of entity yung pinag-uusapan natin. Pagka 0 yung participation constraint, ibig sabihin, the entity can participate, pwedeng hindi. So, strong entity ang tawag doon. Strong entity or identifying entity. Pagka naman yung isa is mandatory or 1 or M ang minimum participation niya, ang tawag doon ay weak entity. Kasi mandatory yung participation niya. So, yun. Next. So, again, ito yung ating cardinality ratio. Ito yung illustration ng many to one cardinality ratio relationship. Yan. So, yung employees ay maraming employees ang nagre-relate sa works for sa kakaunti na department. So, many to one. Maraming employees that works for one department. So, many to one. Another is many to many. Ito naman ay yung sa project, maraming employee ang nag-works on projects, on one project, and then yung project can accept isang employee ay pwedeng ma-assign sa one or more projects. Ayan. Kaya many to many yung relationship nila. Okay, so relationships and relationship types. So ano na yung different types ng relationship? We can have a recursive relationship. Another word for recursive relationship is unary relationship type. So both participants are the same entity type in different roles. For example, yung relation na supervision between employee and employee. So employee lang yung participating entity sa relationship na supervision. So ito yung kaninang relationship na hindi verb yung nakalagay sa relationship name, relationship type name. Tapos yung connecting line niya ay may label sa bawat kaliwa at kanan. Yun yung description or yung role na role participation dun sa unary type. So ang relationship is supervision, ang role is supervisor, another role is subordinate or supervisee. So, example dito sa figure natin, yung first role ng employee is labeled 1 and labeled 2 yung isa. Okay, tingnan natin. So, pagka gumawa kayo ng recursive relationship ng unary type, it is there is a need or required yung ilalagay mo yung role na piniplay nung entity dun sa relationship. Yan. So ito yung diagram natin ng recursive relationship between employee and the entity employee and the relationship type supervision. Ayan. So 1:1 din, one employee. Yan, in the following figure, yung first role participation is labeled with 1, and yung second role participation is labeled with 2. So, yung first role is 1, another is 2. Yun nga lang, hindi nakalagay kung sino yung, alin yung supervisor at saka alin yung supervisee. Kung role 1 ba or role 2. Hindi nilagay dito. Okay, so basta yung isa dyan ay yung supervisor na role, another is supervisee na role. Okay, wala naman ako nakikita na 1 is to many, ano? Or many to 1 na relationship. 1 is to 1 ang supervisor-supervisee relationship. Okay, balik tayo dun sa ating database schema ng company. So, naandito, tinuturo ng red arrow yung unary relationship na supervision and yung entity na relationship and then yung relationship roles na supervisor at saka supervisee. And makita rin natin, merong, and so, yung nakalagay din yung cardinality ratio na 1 is to n na relationship. Oh, okay. So, dito sa yung kaninang diagram ng employee supervision, hindi naman pinakita yung 1 is to many na relationship. Pero dito sa schema, dito sa database schema, ay ang nakalagay na cardinality ng relationship ay 1 is to many, 1 is to n. One supervisor, many supervisees. Okay. So, yan. Attributes of relationship types. A relationship type can have attributes, for example, hours per week of works on. So, tandaan natin, yung mga relationship types natin, for example, yung mga diamonds. Ayun. So, hindi lang pala entity types yung pwedeng magkaroon ng attributes. Even yung diamond na relationships, pwedeng magkaroon ng attributes. For example nga, itong works on, meron siyang attribute na hours per week. Its value for each relationship instance describes the number of hours per week that an employee works on a project. Yan. For example, dito sa ating database schema, yung manages na relationship ay merong start date na attribute. Yung works on ay merong hours. Yan. Okay. Balik na naman tayo sa structural constraints. Structural constraints on relationships. Cardinality ratio of a binary relationship. So, ang gusto natin, yung ating database schema, ER diagram yung normal na ginagamit nating representation, ER chain notation, ay normally gusto natin lahat ng relationships remains binary. So, later on, pag-aralan natin paano yung unary relationship ay magiging binary or yung ternary ay gagawin ding binary. Okay, kasi pinaka-optimal yon. So, cardinality ratio of a binary relationship, again, is what yung cardinality ratio can be 1 is to 1, 1 is to many, many to 1, or many to many. So, paano natin nire-represent yan sa ating diagram? It is shown by placing appropriate number on the link. So, meron kang entities, yung dalawang entities mo ay linked into the relationship. So, sa ibabaw nung link na yon, yung ilalagay yung number ng cardinality ratio to represent sa para ma-represent natin sa diagram natin yung cardinality ratio. Participation constraint. On each participating entity type, so pagka total participation yung ilalagay natin, pwede nating lagyan ng 1 or M. Ayan, called existence dependency. Pagka naman hindi total participation or partial participation lang, it is denoted by 0. Another requirement to represent the participation constraint na partial participation, total participation, pagka total yung participation niya, dapat hindi lamang yung entity type ang represented by a rectangle na may double lines, dapat yung linking line niya, relationship line niya is double line din. And syempre, yung relationship, yung diamond ng weak relationship is double lines din. Ayan. So, next. So, yun nga, alternative min-max notation ng structural constraints para yung cardinality ratio at saka participation constraint ay pareho nating maipakita sa diagrams natin. Okay, so specified on each participation of an entity type E in a relationship type R specifies that each entity in E participate in at least minimum and at most maximum relationship instance in R. So by default or no constraints, no constraint na structural constraints pagka ang participation constraint ay 0, ayun, so walang constraint yon. Pagka ang cardinality ratio ay n, ayun, ibig sabihin up to sawa, ayun, so walang constraint sa maximum. Okay, so ang rule, ang minimum syempre ay dapat mas maliit or equal to the maximum, or yung minimum is greater than or equal to 0. Siyempre, wala tayong negative number. Okay? And then, yung maximum is greater than or equal to 1. Derived from the knowledge of mini-world constraints. Okay, so examples. A department has exactly one manager and an employee can manage at most one department. So, ito, example, sa relation na employee at saka managers. So, ilalagay natin yung 0 at saka 1. And then, yung department in managers ay minimum 1, maximum of 1. Okay. So another example, yung employee can work exactly on one department, but department can have any number of employees. So yung employee works for, ang specify natin na min-max is 1 and 1. Yung department naman sa works for is 0 and many. So tingnan natin sa diagram yun. Ayan. So ang cardinality ratio is 1:1. Ito yung ng relationship type managers with participating entities na employees and departments. So yung employees to managers is ang minimum participation or participation constraint niya ay wala or 0. Ang maximum na relationship ratio niya is maximum of 1. Ayun. And then, manages one department. So, yung manages at saka department, minimum of 1, maximum of 1. So, ibig sabihin, kung walang employee na magmamanage sa department, hindi pwedeng mag-exist yung department. Ayun. Tapos, maximum na 1 employee lang ang pwedeng mag-manage ng isang department. Hindi pwedeng isang employee, maraming departments. Or hindi pwedeng maraming employee ang magmamanage ng isang department. Isa lang. Okay. So, yung namang relationship type na works for na ang participating entity type sa employee at saka department ay merong cardinality ratio na 1:many, pero ang kanyang structural constraints ay yung employee ay at least one employee at maximum na one employee should work for a department. So, dito naman, pag walang department, so may zero participation or walang participation constraint ang department dito, no? So, hindi siya constrained na mag-participate sa works for. Pero pwedeng marami ang maraming employees ang tanggapin ni department. Maraming employees ang pwedeng ma-assign sa isang department. Okay. So, makita natin dahil zero yung participation constraint ni department, meaning pag walang department, hindi pwedeng mag-participate yung employee. Pag merong department, ayun, required at least one na employee ay mag-participate. Ayun, so tingnan natin yung no. Ayun, so nandito yung inilagay natin yung min-max notation sa ating company database, ER schema diagram. Ayun, so nakalagay na. Plus, ang inilagay pa natin dito, hindi lamang yung unary relationship ang nilagay natin ng role labels, lahat ng relationships nilagay natin ng label. So, lahat ng minimum of 1 na participation dapat double lines. Tapos yung zero participation constraint, single line lang yun. Okay, next, relationships of higher degree. So, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito, pinakita natin ay dalawa, no? Unary degree ng relationship at saka binary degree ng relationships. So, again, yung degree 2 are called binary. So, paano ma-determine ulit yung degree ng relationship? Bilangin mo yung number of entities na nagpa-participate dun sa relationship na yon. So, sa isang relationship, pagka tatlo na yung nakaduksong sa kanya na entity types, ternary na ang tawag doon. Pag 4 or more, so n-nary. N-ary na yung type. Okay? So, in general, an n-ary relationship is not equivalent to n-binary relationships. Okay, next. Data modeling tools, a number of popular tools that cover conceptual modeling and mapping into relational schema design. So, examples are Erwin, S-Designer, ER Studio, etc. So, may pang-drawing kasi ng, ng mga diagrams na yan. So, mahirap kasi pagka gagamit ka ng Word, tapos ay mga pang-drawing ng Word lang or ng mga pang-drawing lang sa PowerPoint. Positives, so mas maganda yung pag-ano mo, no? Pag gumamit ka nitong mga applications na to, mga designer, mas mabilis yung pag-drawing yung para sa documentation mo. Again, pagka gumawa ka ng documentation, yung documentation ay pwede mong i-copyright. Yung running program kasi hindi mo naman pwedeng i-copyright yung running program eh. Pagka naman pinrint mo lang yung lahat ng code, although required yun, pagka pagka magpapa-copyright ka ng software program, yung codes ay actually pwede mong ipa-copyright. However, mahirap namang basahin ng ang nasa intellectual property office actually ay mga lawyer. So, paano nila maiintindihan yung yung explanation mo sa software mo kung puro codes yun? So, gamit ka ng diagram notations. Ayan. So, mas mabilis ka makakapag-document. So, problems with current modeling tools, in diagramming, poor conceptual, meaningful notation, to avoid the problem of layout algorithms and aesthetic of diagrams, they prefer boxes and lines and do nothing more than represent relationships among resulting tables. So, with a few exceptions. So, do nothing more than represent yung primary and foreign key relationships. Methodology, the current modeling tools lack of built-in methodology support. Poor trade-off analysis or user-driven design preference for design verification and suggestions for improvement. So, again, ang pinag-uusapan natin dito ay yung Peter Chen notation ng modeling. Ito yung tinatawag na legacy kasi ito yung pinakaunang modeling tool na ginagamit natin to represent the data. Pero may mga bago na ngayon. Okay. So, ito yung mga applications na ginagamit pang model. Not all of them ay nagamit ko, So, meron tayong ER Studio, DB Artisan, yung Developer 2000, Designer 2000, System Architect 2001, Platform Enterprise Modeling Suite, Erwin, BP-Win, Paradigm Plus, Pewter ng Persistence, eto, Rational Rows. Eto yung ang sa pagkakaalam ko is, narinig ko siya, na-introduce siya sa akin pero hindi ko talaga nagamit siya sa isang project. Pero ang notation dito ay instead na Peter Chen, UML class diagram notation ang ginagamit. Na pagka naglagay ka ng ng UML diagrams mo, pwede mo siyang i-compile. Ang lalabas ay C++ at saka Java na mga codes. Ayan. And then our WMetro Xcase, Enterprise Application Suite ng Sybase. Ito yung lagi kong nagagamit, itong Visio Enterprise. Ayan po, pang drawing lang talaga siya. And lately, pwede na daw siyang i-compile din, kagaya ng Rational Rows. Pag kinompile mo, Visual Basic at saka Visual C code yung lalabas. Ayan. Magiging resulting. Okay, next. So, meron dito example ng ER diagram for database, for a bank database. So, tandaan nyo to, baka magamit natin sa activity. Okay. So, problem with ER notation, the entity relationship model in its original form did not support the concepts of specialization and generalization abstractions. Next. So, dahil meron kasing mga software problems na kailangan i-represent na yung concepts ng specialization and generalization. Yan, kagaya nga ng ideally, dapat ang relationships natin ay represented into binary relationships. However, nag-i-exist minsan yung unary relationship. So, pagka may unary relationship ka, para maging binary yon, kailangan mong magkaroon ng specialization. I-represent specialization yung roles nila. So, yung employees, pwede mong i-specialize into the supervisor roles at saka supervisee na role. Yun. So, sa susunod na discussion natin, kailangan nating i-discuss yung tinatawag na Extended Entity Relationship or EER na model, which incorporates yung set-subset relationships at saka specialization and generalization hierarchies. Next chapter illustrates how the AR model can be extended with set-subset relationships and specialization, generalization hierarchies, and how to display them in AER diagrams. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation, and to be continued tayo sa AER model. Ano? Okay, so hope you understand yung mga tinuturo kong concepts regarding sa ER diagram using Peter Chen notation. So wala na tayong time sa medyo mapahaba pagka discuss pa natin yung UML. So we'll have another discussion for the UML, another video discussion for that. Okay, so with that, thank you very much for your time for viewing this video. So if you have additional questions or clarification, kindly send them sa chat na lang, and if we have to have a synchronous online video meeting, so please request it. Well, with that,